Alright, so today we're talking about the brand new DJI Mini 3 Pro. Alright, so let's just start by unboxing this new little beast. This thing is tiny. As you can see, it is super small. Here, compared to my hand, this is tiny. Now, in the box, we have a brand new controller as well, but I will talk about the controller a little bit later. So let's just kick it off like straight away and talk about the camera, because I think this is always like the most important thing about a drone, because it's all about making images. So yeah, let's just start off with the camera. So the camera has a 1/1.3 inch sensor, and it's capturing 4K at up to 60 frames per second, as well as 1080p at up to 120 frames per second. The images straight off the drone are looking really good. As you can see, like all of these shots were captured on this new DJI Mini Pro. All the drone shots that you saw in my release video are obviously captured on the DJI Mini 3 Pro, and the quality is amazing for such a tiny little drone. Regarding photos, it's capturing 48 megapixels, it's capturing RAW photos, of course, and the photos are absolutely crisp. I don't have much to say about the photos. To me, they are just as good as the DJI Air2S, for example. Now, talking about the lens, the field of view is equivalent to a 24 millimeters, and the aperture is a fixed f1.7 aperture. So this is very bright and you cannot change it, meaning that you will have to have a lot of ND filters. For example, for the shoot I did for the release video, I had ND 8, 16, 32, 64, up to 256. For example, when we were shooting the skiing scenes, it was complete bright daylight, it was in the mountains with the snow being white, everything was super bright. So I used the 256 ND on the drone to capture these scenes. So just keep in mind that you will need a lot of ND filters and some very strong ones to have a correct exposure. Because, for example, for the release video I did, all of the shots I did were captured at 25 frames per second, meaning that my shutter speed has to be 1/50. And then since I'm at f1.7, the ND filter has to be very strong. So for the ND filters, it's super easy to change them. It's exactly the same as on all the other DJI drones. You have a really good grip on this one. I feel like it's even easier to change it on this one. And yeah, it just takes a second. Still talking about the lens, a very important thing that I really like in my video is when I shoot towards the sun, I like to have some really nice flares. To be honest, on this one, there is no miracle. Like the lens is so small, there isn't much glass in it, so the lens flares aren't looking really amazing. As you can see on the footage, here's like some situation where I could have some really nice lens flares. This is not really the case. Is it important for some people? Yes. But when we're talking about a drone, I don't think this is the most important thing, but I just wanted to talk about it real quick. Another very important thing, the dynamic range. Once again, very impressed with the dynamic range of this drone. It has a 12.6 stops dynamic range, which is exactly the same as the DJI Air2S, but only when you're shooting below 30 frames per second. So I talked with the engineers at DJI. They explained me that when you're shooting less, like 30 frames per second or less, you have the best dynamic range, which is 12.6 stops, same as the DJI Air2S, and this is once again really impressive for such a little drone. Now talking about a very important topic, the colors. So this DJI Mini 3 Pro is capturing 8-bit colors, while the color depth on the DJI Air2S was 422 10-bit, meaning that the Air2S is capturing more colors than the Mini 3 Pro, which will have an impact on your post-production color grading workflow. Basically, you will be able to push your color grading more with a camera that is recording more colors, such as 422 10-bit, while on 8-bit you will be able to push it a little bit less. for beginners or for people that are like not professionals or not really pushing the color grading, it doesn't have much of an impact. But yeah, this is something important to know. This one is capturing 8-bit colors. Also, it's shooting log, but this is not like the same D-Log as we have on the Mavic 3 or on the Air2S. This one is capturing D-Cine-like, which I think is the same as the thing we have on the DJI Pocket 2, for example. I cannot show you any D-Cine-like footage because when I was shooting the release video, the D-Cine-like wasn't available yet. I mean, they were still working on it and everything. So I cannot show you any footage. So everything I shot was like normal, no log footage. So I couldn't like push the color grading that much, but still, as you can see, like I've been able to color grade it still based on like a normal footage, which is not a log footage. So yeah, you can still like have a little look at the color grading I've been able to do on this 4K 25 8-bit normal footage. All right, so now that we've been through like all the main specs regarding the camera, let's talk about like two new things, new innovations that we have on this drone. First of all, the tracking. Now the tracking is very easy to do. It's a bit the same as we have on the DJI Pocket 2. So when you're flying, you don't have to go through any menu or whatever. When you're flying, you have your subject, you can just select it with your finger and it's gonna recognize what it is. Like for example, here on the shots, I was at the lake quickly testing the tracking and there was just a boat passing by. So I just selected it with my thumb and then it recognized that it was a boat straight away. And then I could just turn around the boat and it was keeping the boat in the center of the image. All right, so now let's talk about the last thing regarding the camera. But the thing that is making this drone different from all the other DJI drones is the gimbal. There are two new features on this gimbal that we don't have on the other DJI drones. First one is the fact that you can actually aim upwards with the camera. So here, as you can see, I can go all the way and really aiming upwards with the camera, which allows you to create some really creative shots. I haven't used it that much in the edit. I used it for two different shots. One, when my athlete was like on the edge of the cliff, I was down and aiming up and then going upwards and at the same time going down with the gimbal. And the other one is when the skier was about to drop on this very steep line. I was below him and same, I was like aiming upwards towards him who was on top, and then I was just rotating and at the same time I was going down with the camera like this. So this is a very cool thing. And now the other thing that everyone is excited about is that now we can, again, like we had on the first Mavic, we can shoot vertical footage. So basically there's just a button on the controller and you can just rotate the camera, allowing you to shoot 9:16 footage, which is optimized for social medias. So, and same, you can still like use the gimbal normally. You can aim upwards as well while being vertical. So this is a really cool feature for social media. Same for photos, since like almost all the photos we post on social medias are vertical. This is something really, really cool. So now that we've talked pretty much about all the camera, the images and everything, let's talk about another thing that is making this drone unique is its body. So as you can see and as you know, this drone is really, really tiny. So when you fold it, check, it's just so small. You literally like don't even need a backpack. You can just put it in your pocket, put it in your jacket's pocket. It's so tiny. And then talking about the weight, it only weighs 249 grams with the battery on. So this is the same weight as your smartphone. Same size, even a little bit smaller than your smartphone, and same weight. This is just amazing. So now if we compare all three drones regarding the size, here we have the Mini 3 Pro, here we have the Air2S, and here the Mavic 3. So obviously the Mini 3 Pro is already a lot smaller than the Air2S. I would say there's like 1/4 of the size of the Air2S less. And then, of course, as I said, it doesn't make sense to compare them, but it's almost half the size of the Mavic 3. So then if we put them on top of each other to see like the size difference, we can clearly see that the Mini 3 Pro is a lot smaller than the Mavic 3 and smaller than the Air2S. And also the weight is like, the weight is even more of a difference, I think. You can just check the numbers, but yeah, the weight is a huge difference, even more than the size when you compare the Mini 3 to the Air2S. So yeah, that's the thing that is making this drone very interesting, is how small it is. You can fly through like very narrow spaces with it. It's so small, it's going through everything. And also the fact that it's only 249 grams. I'm not going to talk too much about it because it depends on all the countries and everything. But depending on the countries, it has a real impact on the regulations. For some countries, you don't need a license and stuff like this. So this is something you will have to study by yourself, but this is definitely something to consider regarding this drone. And this is what makes it like very interesting and very different from all the other one. But also, since we're talking about its small size, it's also having an impact on how it's flying. So first of all, regarding the speed, this drone is not going as fast as the other drones I've been using, Mavic 3, Air2S. This Mini 3 Pro is going at 57 kilometers per hour. Sometimes I was having a hard time just keeping up with the pace of the skater because it was just not going fast enough. I was in sports mode, going full speed. So I had to ask the skateboarder to go a little bit slower and stuff like this. So once again, this is something to have in mind. Yes, it's small. Yes, it's tiny. Yes, it's very light, but it's not going as fast as the Air2S, for example. I'm not going to really compare it once again to the Mavic 3 Pro because it doesn't really make sense, but to compare it to the Air2S, I think makes sense. And it's not going quite as fast as the Air2S. So this is also going to have an impact on how it's flying in the wind. When we were at the spot with the cliff, it was a little bit windy. It was doing fine, but once again, the wind was making it slower. Sometimes it was like a little bit wobbly. I had some people commenting on my video asking how it was doing in the wind because they had the Mini 2 and they were too scared to fly in the mountains because of the wind and stuff like this. I didn't test it in any extreme conditions because we didn't have any extreme conditions regarding wind, but I think it's doing fine as long as it's not like too extreme. I cannot really say because I haven't tested it in extreme conditions, but it was windy at the cliffs. It was doing totally fine. It impacted the speed obviously, but it didn't impact like the way it was really flying. So you can definitely fly in the wind, but I would say be careful when it gets too windy, especially in the mountains or places like this. So still talking about extreme conditions, I didn't test the drone in any like super warm conditions or super cold conditions, but yes, I tested it in cold conditions. When we were shooting the skiing part in the mountains, we started very early at around sunrise, and it was -5 degrees Celsius, I think. So it was below 0 degrees Celsius for sure, and the drone was doing just fine. I didn't see anything that was impacting the drone really. Maybe the battery life a little bit, but other than that, I didn't notice anything special regarding the cold. Once again, it wasn't like extremely cold, but still it was below 0. So yeah, I still wanted to like talk about it, and yeah, it did totally fine. So now last thing about how it flies, let's talk real quick about the sensors. So there are 3 different kind of sensors here. There are 2 sensors in the front, 2 that are in the front of the drone as well, but aiming backwards, looking at the back of the drone, and there are 2 more sensors in the back. Personally, regarding sensors, they do their jobs, they work totally fine, but still I don't 100% rely on them, because even if like you're going towards a tree, the sensors are going to see the tree, but maybe they're not going to see like a little branch that is sticking out, and that might end up in your propeller. So remain careful. Even if the sensors are working, I always rely on my own feeling and on my own flying skills, I would say, to not crash it. And if I want to go through tight spaces and stuff like this, I always turn the sensors off, because sometimes it's like gonna stop the drone or making go right or left, and I prefer just being free and making sure that it's going where I want and completely relying on my flying ability. Yeah. So now, next very important thing obviously is the battery. So before talking about how long they last, I will show you how they look. So they come here at the back of the drone, whoop, they come out, and as you can see, once again, they are very, very small and tiny, meaning that you can carry lots of them in your backpack. I don't remember exactly, but I think while we were shooting the release video, I had probably around 8 of them in my backpack, and they just weigh nothing, so you can just carry them around like nothing. And there are actually 2 versions of these batteries. The ones I have are the normal version, and the other one is like the, I don't know, the pro version or whatever, like they last longer, but they are not available in Europe. And the other one on the paper, they last for 47 minutes. I cannot talk about these because I didn't test them, but this one on the paper, they last for 34 minutes. According to DJI, they made their test in windless conditions, and the drone was flying at 21.6 kilometers per hour. So in real life, they never lasted, for me, they never lasted 34 minutes. To my experience for the last month shooting with the drone, they last more around 20 minutes, I would say. I think they last less than the Air2S, and meaning that you have to change more often, obviously, but then you can carry more because they are so small. So they're flying less long, but you can carry more. So yeah, that's the thing about the batteries. Maybe the fact that they don't last as long as the other drones can have an impact on your shots. Like if you have to go, like for example, for the skiing part, I was flying from like very far away, so I was like on a hill here, and in between there was like almost 2 kilometers. So I had to go, so it was already like using the battery just to go to the spot, and then I had to wait for them to like start going down. And then I had the first skier going down, I was filming him, and then sometimes I had to like come back to where I was to change the battery to make sure I had enough battery for the second skier. But once again, the distance in between me and my subject was very big, like, I mean, very long. So there was like almost 2 kilometers, I think, maybe even more. I don't remember exactly, but it was very far. So yeah, that can have an impact on your ability to make the shots as well when your subject is very far away. All right, and now last thing to talk about regarding this drone, I'm gonna clean it a little bit, is the controller. This is a brand new controller, and it has a built-in screen, which I really like. To be honest, I hate having to take my phone, put my phone on the controller. My phone is pretty old, so the phone battery is not lasting very long. So if then I'm somewhere and then my phone is running out of battery, it means that I always have to have like a power bank in my backpack to make sure the phone is always charged to be able to fly the drone. Now this is not gonna happen with this one because the screen is built in. You just take it out, you don't have to deal with any cable. You just turn the drone on, and boom, you fly. That's really good. The downside of it, and I've seen people commenting on my videos that they are not happy about it, is that it makes the controller pretty big. So the controller compared to the drone, so the controller is bigger, and yeah, the controller is heavier than the drone as well. This is one thing to have in mind. I think you can buy it with other controllers. I also saw that you can buy the drone on its own, so you can even use like maybe older controllers. But yeah, to be honest, personally, I really like the fact that the screen is built in. Now, another thing to talk about regarding the controller is the transmission. To be honest, I think the transmission is a little bit less good than on the Air2S or on the big Mavic 3. Sometimes when I was like very far away with the drone, I didn't have any obstacles between myself and the drone. There was a straight line. Yes, the drone was very, very far, like almost 2 kilometers sometimes, maybe even more. And sometimes I was kind of losing connection despite having like no obstacles in between. But it shouldn't have an impact on getting the drone back, because if you make sure that before flying you have all the GPS, it has the return to home point and stuff like this. If you lose connection, the drone is just gonna come home. I didn't have any issue with it. So before flying, just really make sure that you have all the GPS, the drone has the return to home location. And also one thing that happened to me once is that I was flying below trees. So basically I was in a forest, there was like a hole right in front of me. So I took off and then I had to go straight to get out of the forest through the hole, but above my head were trees. So then I lost connection. It wasn't with this one, it was with the Air2S. Then I lost connection, so the drone had to come back, and then he was like, okay, I'm home, so I'm just gonna go down. And then he saw the top of the trees and he was like, oh, okay, I'm home, and then he landed in the trees. So this was my fault. I should have thought about it earlier, but this is something to think about. So make sure to have only sky above your head, and also make sure you have the GPS. That way, in case you lose connection, you make sure it's gonna come home and you won't lose your drone, obviously. So now that we have a good overall view of this new little beast of a drone, let's jump onto the conclusion and I will give you guys my personal opinion. I've been using it for more than a month and I've been using all the other DJI drones as well. So first of all, it doesn't make sense to compare this drone to the Mavic 3 for obvious reasons. I mean, this is not the same budget. This one is so small, the Mavic 3 is a lot bigger, the camera is so different and everything, so I don't think it really makes sense to compare it because it's just obvious. But comparing it to the Air2S, I think really makes sense. First of all, the way you will carry it, the weight and everything, it makes sense. This one is easier to carry. It's much smaller. You can carry even more batteries. I was carrying a lot of batteries on the Air2S in my backpack, but with this one you can carry even more. You can even just put it in your pocket or whatever. So when it comes to carrying it and like the size and everything, this one is obviously the winner. But then when it comes to creating videos, I would still go for the Air2S. If you're a professional filmmaker, image quality is critical, and I think this one is offering, don't get me wrong, this one is offering insane image quality for the size, but I think the Air2S is still one step better than this one. Dynamic range, as I said, is pretty similar, but the Air2S is capturing 5.4K while this one is capturing 4K. So on the Air2S you will be able to crop and stuff like this, play with the dolly zoom without losing any resolution if your timeline is in 4K. And also the big difference for me is that the Air2S is capturing 4:2 10-bit colors while this one is capturing 8-bit colors. So this is having an impact. Once again, I'm talking about professional filmmakers really pushing the color grading and stuff like this. Now if you're a beginner or if you're a filmmaker but not really looking for the colors and stuff like this, this is definitely a drone to use for sure. Also, if you're like on a super long shoot and you have to go like super far, carry everything for, I don't know, for a week in the mountains, and you already have like some big other cameras and everything, this could be the drone to go for as well. I really like the Air2S. I'm still using it on a lot of projects because when I have to carry a lot of stuff in my backpack, I prefer taking the Air2S rather than the Mavic 3 because the Mavic 3 is a lot bigger. But then if you need even less weight, maybe this could be the way to go. Now, if we're talking about photographers, I would definitely go for the Mini 3 because it's cool. You can like rotate the camera so you can get shots that are ready for your Instagram, for your stories, like straight away. And same for the photos. You can also shoot vertical, and the photo quality of this one to me is similar to the photo quality of the Air2S. It's so small, it feels like nothing in your backpack. So this is something to really consider, especially for outdoor filmmakers. But yeah, so that's kind of my conclusion on it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I try to be quick all the time because I hate reviews and tutorials that are like too long. But at the same time, I have to talk a little bit about everything. So if you have any questions, stuff like this, let me know in the comments. I'm always happy to answer and try to help as much as I can. If you want to support, make sure to subscribe. I will keep doing more reviews, more tutorials, more behind the scenes as well. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next one.